welcome to Anderson Community Television. My name is May Hanna, and welcome to our show called College Connection. It's a show about UC Claremont College and all the great things that are happening there. So first, I'd like to introduce you to Jay Page, Assistant Professor of Business Management and Marketing. Welcome, Jay. And welcome Alex Taylor, who is a business student at UC Claremont College. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you.
So this show, I'm really excited because we've got two segments of this show, and the show is about professors like Jay and students like Alex that spent their spring break not on a sunny beach in Florida, but they spent their spring break doing some really interesting things. And Jay took a group of students to Portland and on a spring break trip, but it was also for college credit. So tell us a little bit about this, Jay.
One of the things I wanted to do when I first started at UC Claremont last year was to create a unique domestic travel opportunity for our students. And I happened to go out to Portland in 2009 as a tourist and saw that it's very much a very friendly area, as well as a very entrepreneurial area. Portland is a melting pot of all kinds of different businesses, including a very unique food cart concentration with over 700 licensed in the city. I also knew it had an infrastructure with a light rail and streetcar system that we can move students around incredibly easy. After investigating it further from a business perspective, we found that there were several world headquarters of unique companies, including Pendleton Woolen Mills, Keene, and some other, again, very unique companies that we don't see around here. They have a very heavily concentrated industries of athletic and outdoor footwear companies.
Great. And so how many students did you take on
This year
trip?
we took 12. It was an incredibly challenging task to pick those 12. I got to know all my students well. Several different criteria. I knew they had to have the right personality because we're going to interact with key business decision makers in a lot of different companies. I knew they had to get along well with others. I knew that they need to have academic success in the classroom because one of our goals during this whole trip was what I call bring textbooks to life. So concepts and terms that they learned in the classroom, they had an opportunity to apply those to different scenarios from the business perspective in Portland.
Great.
Yep.
And Alex was one of the students.
Yep.
So Alex, you are in your second year at UC Claremont College,
Yes.
right? So what attracted you to this trip?
Portland's always attracted me because of the culture and the art out there, the amazing food that I only had heard about before going, and they held true to that. And also the breweries and just the culture in general, very much. Very green out there as well, green
Great.
energy.
Great. And so the students received college credit for spending the week in Portland. Is that correct?
As part of the whole model, we developed a 3-hour credit class. The students met once a month in the classroom in January and February, and then we met right before we went in March. We did do also some online utilizing Blackboard. They had some discussion questions to answer. And then, of course, we spent the week out there. 2 major projects that the students are working on, and actually we'll have a research paper concern not the infrastructure, the light rail, and the streetcar in Portland, and then comparing it to what's happening in downtown Cincinnati now with the implementation of the streetcar, and just kind of predicting how successful Cincinnati will be, as well as making some recommendations. Obviously, they know now the importance of the light rail to feed a streetcar, and that's one recommendation they'll clearly make. The other thing is around the phenomenal food cart industry in Portland and the pod system that they utilize, where the food carts are concentrating in certain areas of the city. Like they have a downtown pod that's open 11 to 4. They have a nighttime pod that's located close to the college campus. They developed a pod across the river that's built around a playground, so it's more kid-oriented and family-friendly. So
That's great.
So we're wanting to recommend that to City Council in downtown Cincinnati to look at that as a potential way to grow and also allow entrepreneurs into the city even more.
Fantastic. Yeah. So you're each wearing shirts from Portland.
Absolutely.
And Alex, yours is just just a standard Portland shirt,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And then Jay, you have one of the company shirts,
Absolutely.
one of the companies. So tell us a little bit about the companies you visited and
Sure.
maybe about Pendleton.
I'll actually start with Pendleton Woolen Mills. It's one of the oldest companies in Oregon. It's actually one of the older companies in the United States, founded in 1869 by the Bishop family. And we had an opportunity to tour their world headquarters as one of several companies, and I'll quickly talk about them in a minute. But Pendleton, like I said, is incredibly unique because it's family owned. They're in their 5th generation. We had an opportunity to meet one of the founding family members, the bishops, as well as interact with the CEO, several different other executives of the organization as we toured their world headquarters, and had a really unique opportunity. We got to meet Season 8 Project Runway winner Gretchen Jones, which kind of was fascinating to the students as well as
We were all
myself
very,
to meet a reality
star-shocked.
star. Pendleton focuses more on the 30 to 40-year-old because they are a little bit more expensive because they're 100% wool. Most of them actually made across the river in Washington. But I think she's going after a little bit of the younger generation.
She even let us look at her upcoming line preview of that, and even Pendleton for their target market let us look at their spring 2015 and Christmas and whatnot. And you know, Gretchen's line is very unique, and I'm really excited to see how the younger generation looks at her and Pendleton in a new way.
So you were familiar with the Project Runway winner?
I've
who you
watched
met?
it, yes.
Oh, okay.
And I love fashion, so to get a peek at her sketches and what we're gonna look at in the stores soon, I was just like, man, I feel special. Like it was really great. She took pictures with all of us individually and as a group, so she was just very nice and very great.
That's great. I did
Absolutely.
see some of your tweets and photos that you posted on your Facebook site from your experience. So that was,
Absolutely.
and with her, that was neat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Some other really unique companies we got to visit because we kind of got some contrast. We visited Keen Footwear that's only been in business just a little over 10 years that are in the high-end athletic outdoor apparel, mostly shoes, but now they just launched a clothing line. So we got to hear about that, venture into that. We also had a chance to go to Nutcase Helmets, which is a gentleman who decided to leave Nike and start a bicycle helmet company that makes very eccentric and different colors that they use. Another really cool organization that we got to meet is Travel Portland, which sells the city of Portland to tourism as well as conventions and meetings. And they even really helped us understand the importance of the light rail and the streetcar, and obviously something Cincinnati can hopefully capitalize on. But it's a really neat and fun organization that are doing some really cool marketing things. Another part of the trip was to introduce students to careers that they might not be familiar with, and that's clearly one. I don't think students understood you can get a job selling a city, especially a city that you really love. And the Travel Portland organizations does phenomenal. We met the CEO, several key decision makers in that company as well.
And they actually bought us a shirt and sent it to us so we could, just put their name out there as well. And that was very nice of them.
yeah, and look at what you're doing.
Hey, I'm selling you guys.
The gentleman that we ended the experience with was actually on Shark Tank, another reality TV show. Started a bicycle pedal powered smoothie company called Moberry, and he's a young guy in his early 30s. Just has one location, getting ready to open a couple more. He spent a couple hours with us one night, sharing his experience with us about creating a small business and hopefully his future growth plans. And I think the students were incredibly impressed with that opportunity too.
Great. Great. So, Alex, what were some of your biggest takeaways besides meeting the Project Runway winner? What were some of your biggest takeaways I'm sure you had some expectations going to Portland, but as you were there and you came back and reflected, what were some of the things you thought, gosh, this will be something I always remember because of what?
Well, mentioning Keen, when we met with them, they taught us what Keen was about, their pillars, and I fell in love with them because their pillars stand on not just providing shoes for their fans, which they call their customers as their fans. They also contribute to the earth. Their very hybrid life is what they call it. They're very environment friendly. And actually what's interesting is when the tsunami hit, they donated $1 million, their whole advertising budget, to the tsunami relief.
Wow.
And that's very risky for a young company because advertisement is what gets your name out there. And they put one out that said, this might be our last advertisement, but this money is going to the tsunami, and we hope that you donate as well to help people out.
The company was 1 year old at that time.
That's amazing.
So
Yeah.
definitely a risk.
Yeah, and Nutcase as well. I love their goofy culture. Their helmet designs are very, very cool. And we walked in, there's just a couch and, coffee available. It was just a really funky vibe, and I loved it because that's what Portland is. It's funky. It's keep Portland weird. So they really live up to it, and they were just super duper nice. They shared stories that were real and honest, and we really appreciated that.
Absolutely.
That's fantastic. And did you meet some alums while you were there, some UC alums?
We did have an opportunity to meet Lee Alligood, who is the Associate City Planner for the City of Milwaukee. And what made it incredibly relevant is they're in the process of connecting a light rail from the City of Milwaukee into downtown Portland streetcar. So we got to hear a little bit about some real world perspectives on the light rail, because one of the places around close to us that may get a light rail sometime is the city of Milford. They're right there by Target. And then secondly, we met Sue Ball, who is with Portland Development Commission, and she's also a University of Cincinnati alum. And she talked about what she did as far as economic development goes. And another career opportunity that our students are not aware of is maybe I don't want to sell a city, but maybe I help impact a city by bringing local businesses or support the businesses. And we got to see an example of some of her work with one of the companies called Aurochs Leather that started out in their Saturday market and now have a brick and mortar store, but her organization helped them with their signage outside the building. So we got to take a tour of that and see her direct work in that. So it was really awesome for the students to have a chance to interact with alum. It really gave them a lot of inspiration, and as well as they know that, hey, I can be that person sometime in the future.
And she even took us to Aurochs and had us meet with them and stuff. And when you watch them communicate, the owner of Aurochs and her, you just saw like they were on a friend basis. She cared about their business and wanted the best for them, and he talked our ears off, and it was great. We learned so much about where they came from, and it's a 4th-generation business. And his dad was working right there because the store is cut up in half. Half of it's retail, and the other half is their workshop where you can watch them make their products. So
They actually came up from Mexico. They're a Mexican Spanish.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. So. You were talking earlier, Alex, you were saying you didn't know that you would be able to have this kind of experience coming to a regional campus of UC. Are you just beyond thrilled that you were able to have that experience?
Yes, because I love to travel, and coming to a branch campus, you automatically think, okay, just show up, go to classes, get my degree. It's cheaper than a main campus, but I know I won't get as many opportunities like studying abroad and whatnot. But these trips that are available to us, they're really great, and they really changed my mind about branch campuses.
Great.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. We only have about a minute left, but Jay, what kind of things do you have planned for next year?
We are actually already selecting our students for Portland 2015.
Great.
We are in the beginning stages of working on a fall experience of 2015 for Austin and San Antonio, Texas. So that's something we're currently developing. We actually just did a day trip to downtown Cincinnati yesterday, and we went to Cincinnati Reds, Procter & Gamble, and we also met with True Quackenbush, who is another entrepreneur who started a small business, Tom and She, and they're now 11 franchises sold and be over 150 in the next 4 years. So
that's great.
Yeah, it's been great.
Well, it sounds really exciting, and I'm really appreciative that you came on and talked about your experiences as a student, and obviously Jay as the professor and coordinator of it. So thank you so much. It sounds like it was a wonderful trip, and we'll look forward to hearing more about your trip next year, for sure.
Yes.
So I hope you stay tuned, because I have 2 more guests who are going to be sharing their experience about Mexico. Welcome back to College Connection. My name is May Hanna, and I'm your host. I appreciate you checking back in. As promised, I have 2 more guests who are going to be sharing their experience about their trip to Mexico. So I'd like to welcome Jeff Rubel, who is our professor of legal studies and the director of the paralegal program at UC Claremont College. Jeff, welcome back to the show.
Hi, May. Thank you.
And Tiffany Yostin.
That's correct.
And who is a paralegal student in our associate's degree program at UC Claremont College. So Tiffany, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
you folks took a trip for spring break to Mexico, and so you're here to talk about that experience, much like Jay Page and his student came. It's really exciting because I know you've done this in the past, but have you done it during spring break?
No, this is the first time we've done it in spring break, which offered a kind of a unique opportunity to the students. Before we've always done it in the summer.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought. So tell us about the trip, Jeff, and tell us how many students you took and how did it differ between taking the students during spring versus summer?
Well, on this trip there were 12 total students, and it's, as you noted, it's the first time we've done it on spring break. So it was a little different. We left the day before classes were out and returned 11 o'clock at night on a Sunday before the classes started.
Yay.
So everybody was wide awake and bright-eyed to start school back. But it really did provide a unique opportunity for the students to take a spring break without spending their time consuming alcohol and running around on a beach. So, the trip itself, we left on Friday and flew into a city called Villahermosa, Mexico, and then took a transport into Chiapas. It is an area that is to the extreme south of Mexico. It's an area that is heavy in coffee and agriculture. But the first stop we went to was Palenque, which is one of their premier Mayan ruin sites. And we stayed there for 2 nights and actually had an archaeologist that led us on a tour through the entire ruins. Very, very famous archaeologist, actually had been in charge of part of the dig in Palenque. So I think it was a very unique experience for the students to get that perspective.
And so for those who are watching and they're thinking paralegal studies, how does that correlate to a trip to Mexico? Connect the dots there for us.
So in about 2008, the University of Cincinnati decided that study abroad needed to be a key component for all students. At that time on our campus, we had almost no opportunities for students on the regional campus to do study abroad. So I began to develop a program that would introduce the students to a different culture and also introduce them to a different legal system. So the first trip we took down, we met with lawyers and did a broad array of things that just focused on culture and legal issues. On this trip, what I really wanted the paralegal students to experience was that whole notion that in the United States we kind of live in a cocoon and we mirror our culture, our legal system, the way we do things onto everyone else. And the reality is that as you go to different countries, as you do a study abroad, you learn that there are very different cultures, different approaches, and I think it makes a very much more rounded student. So connecting the dots, I think future paralegals are leaders. They're people that go to work in law firms where they're communicating with people from diverse backgrounds. And a trip like this, I think, really lets them experience and begin to understand some of the cultural bridges that we close off.
That's fantastic. So Tiffany, what were your impressions of Mexico, and why was this something that you found desirable and thinking, well, I think I want to do that?
I've traveled most of my life. I've lived in different countries, and so this year my son's actually studying abroad in Spain.
Oh,
I thought, well,
wow.
Mom's back in college, the non-traditional student. I want to take the opportunity and do the same. I've never been to Mexico, and it was, we were, speaking about the Mayan ruins. You can't recreate the experience that we had if you did the trip on your own. We would have maybe gone to the Maya ruins, but then I would have never been in the home of the archaeologist and saw the book that his family put together that they took notes deciphering the Mayan language.
Wow.
We met with a scientist who talked about the mice and the corn and the hybrids and the hill, the Indians and how they grow the corn. These things you wouldn't do if you were a tourist. So, and as far as diversity, it does provide you with the skills to work, I would say, in a more diverse environment and gives you more of a global understanding. And nowadays, most corporations, and for paralegals and attorneys and firms, you can pretty much will bet there's going to be some international connection. So be it that they have a facility overseas, that they have maybe an employee or even clients. So it's a skill that's looked for in a paralegal, and we were given the opportunity to experience it.
That's fantastic. That's a interesting way to describe, your experience and how it would correlate into the work experience. Of course, you probably, as a non-traditional student, have a different perspective than some of the students who might be younger. Did you have a good mix of students, Jeff?
We really did. This trip, in fact, was the most unique in terms of the diversity of the students. We had students that were 19 years old, and we had students that were in their 50s. We had students that had never been out of Ohio, and we had students like Tiffany that had actually traveled a little bit. I think that diversity within the group made this by far the most interesting group I've taken, because you take 12 people and you put them together 24/7 for 11 straight days.
Sometimes in cramped buses going through the mountains, and yeah, it was.
But it was a very interesting group because of that as well. For me, the biggest pro for study abroad for anyone is that you really get to put a different cultural lens on. And I think that opportunity to see another culture firsthand really is transformative for most students. I cannot do that in a classroom. I can talk to you all day about different cultures, different people, but I cannot bring you to the reality of it unless you see it firsthand. And I want to read what one of my students wrote after the trip. And I would say the most common comment I get after the trip is, it's changed my whole perspective. It's changed my whole college experience. And this student that just went on this trip wrote, "This was literally the best experience I've had since I got to college. We've been back for a few weeks and I still think about it every day, and it pops into my dreams all the time. I learned more about myself on this trip than I have during my experiences back home. The homestay experience was phenomenal. I am still in contact with my family through Facebook, and I miss them greatly." Most of the students before we left, when I told them they would be living for 6 days, 7 days really, with a middle-class Mexican family, that was, I think, the most stressful part.
Considering the majority of the families do not have
English
skills, and there was a large group of us that also did not have the Spanish skills. So, you're figuring out, okay, if we're living with these people for 7 days, how we are going to communicate our needs, and also communicate, how grateful we are for them for opening their homes to us.
Sure.
You didn't need the language. The language barrier was completely broken on the first day. There's apps on phones that you can use by putting in the word and it will speak it out for you. But my host family had their grandchildren come over, and I helped them with their English lessons. They put on Disney movies in Spanish and told me I was learning Spanish that way. And on the last day, they said to myself and the woman that was staying with us as well that we're in their heart and we're now part of their family. It really, and again, you could not as a tourist have experienced the true culture and made a connection with the people of that country unless we did the host families.
That's fantastic. So when the students were apprehensive about that, you probably tried to share this, it'll be okay, but I guess until you get there, you don't really know.
Well, in fact, I won't read another student comment, but another student wrote, "This was way out of my comfort zone."
I bet.
And I was crazy nervous before the trip. I never dreamed it would be that kind of experience, but the most stressful thing is the homestay. And, we are together for the first 3 days, and we stay in a hotel. And then all of a sudden, in this case, we got to San Cristobal, Chiapas, and suddenly the students go off to their homestays.
We depart. We don't, we're going home with someone who doesn't speak our language. We do not speak their language. We're following them down the sidewalk with our suitcases, going through this maze of buildings thinking, oh my gosh, are we going to find our way back? How are we going to ask for things? So I think with the diversity of the students that went with the age group, we really helped one another with that.
Well, consistently, the students have said in all 4 trips I've taken, the highlight was the homestay. And I told them, we meet 3 times before we go, and I told them that, But again, you have to experience that to really appreciate it. And so this trip, most of the students had really nice families. I'm amazed at how many of them have said to me, oh, I'm emailing my family, I'm in contact with my family. And that's something, that bonding, that experience is something that you can't teach in a classroom.
Right, of course.
And so, you know, one of the other things we did when we were on the trip was we had a Mexican attorney come in and talk to the group. Mexico's going through right now some of the things we went through in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and even up to right today with women's rights. And how do they deal with domestic abuse and women that are disempowered. And so we had this terrific talk about their experience and what they're doing. And you know, I think most of the students left that just saying, wow, things are not that different when you cross borders.
That's fantastic. So Jeff, the students did receive college credit for going on the week-long trip.
It's a 3-credit class
Okay.
that they can apply in multiple programs or in the paralegal program itself. And this particular trip, we had 4 people that were not paralegal students that went on the trip. One of them, 3 of them were actually business students in the downtown campus. But one of them was a Spanish major. Part of what they do during the trip is take Spanish lessons every day for a few hours.
Which is really enjoyable. It's an international school. It was run, well, it is run by a woman from Germany who's lived there for many years. And while we were there, there were other nationalities and people from all walks of life taking classes. And what we did was at the beginning of the day, we would all show up and congregate at school, divide up into our levels, and we would have 2 different lessons, and then from there we go into town and do a practicum and, you know, try out what we learned for the morning.
So
That's
another
fantastic.
opportunity for cultural lenses. I mean, we went into a school where you had people from all across Europe coming there to take classes, Canada, and the students only paradigm is what we do here. They go to a classroom with 30 people, all Americans, all struggling with the exact same issues. Here, they were in classes of anywhere from about 2 to 6 people, experiencing and seeing other students from across the world. And so that's really what this trip is all about.
I mean, speaking for myself personally, but the students that were in my class, we end up connecting very well with their instructors and have exchanged emails and photos and
Wonderful.
yeah, you make long-lasting friendships.
That's fantastic. Well, it's hard to believe, but our time is already up. I know you have some good plans for next year, much the same, I'm sure bigger and better.
Yep.
And so folks who are watching who are interested in this will have information posted on our website about this for current students. So you have to be a current student to be a part of this. But thank you so much, Tiffany and Jeff. It sounds like it was an amazing experience, and I really appreciate you coming on and sharing this with our viewers and our community. So sounds wonderful. On behalf of Anderson Community Television and UC Claremont College, thank you for tuning in, and join us next time.